5 episodes, 5 mystery analysts, from local YouTube phenoms to ESPN guys who I somehow convinced to join the show. Each round of the college football playoffs. Welcome to the road to the Natty. We've got you covered. Hit that follow button, and let's go.
Welcome everyone who watches the Buzz and Roar show, or really any new guests. It is episode 1 of the Road to the Natty. I'm here with ACC Network analyst, really just great guy, Max Brown, ESPN analyst. He's very popular. Go check him out. I will probably link his stuff in the description below and stuff like that. Episode 1, so it's before the college football playoffs right now. First of all, let me just ask you, of course, we're going to be predicting the bracket in a second, but let me just ask you, how do you feel about, the college football playoff committee's bracket just right now? Do you think it was a good bracket? Do you think there could have been some changes, or?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ethan. It's great to be here. I feel like I'm in the minority where I have no problem with it. I have no problem with not only the bracket, but the process in general. I think the subjectivity of the playoff and the committee and the human element is great for college football. I'm old enough to remember the 2003 debacle that started this whole thing where Auburn was on the outside looking in because of a computer-oriented system when Texas and USC played for the Natty. And so to me, that complaint is way worse than where we're at now, where when it's a computer spitting out information, that to me is much worse than human element, people like you, people like me, voting on this process. So I got no issue with it. And I think the best part of this whole thing is this is going to be ironic, but the fact that Notre Dame's on the outside looking in as the 13th team that has a legitimate shot at winning the national title speaks to the health of where college football's at, because 3 years ago, you would have got laughed at for saying team number 13 had a legitimate shot at the national title game. In fact, that was a major criticism of expanding the playoff format from 4 to 12. And that was dead wrong, because Notre Dame, rightfully so, in their bubble is frustrated they're not in, and they're frustrated because they could have won the Natty. But I got no problem with where it all netted out.
All right, so I love your take on that. I do think everything you just said was correct, really. I personally think that it was a pretty good bracket. I think it was one of the best brackets we've seen in the past couple of years, and that's kind of just a hot take. But, I think there's been Florida State looking in last year, and, everybody was mad at that and stuff like that. But let's go ahead and go on with the first game, James Madison versus Oregon, okay? So now, for me, I think it should be a pretty easy game for Oregon, but I'm not saying James Madison cannot come out and absolutely pull an upset against a dominant Oregon team, okay? But on paper, the only thing that James Madison is really comparable right now that I see to Oregon is at rushing yards on offense and stopping the rushing yards on defense. That's what I saw when I was looking at earlier. And Dante Moore and this Oregon team does like running, but Moore can pass so well too. So I don't know for sure whether, it'll be a complete blowout or not, but it for sure will probably, in my opinion, be not necessarily an easy win for Oregon, but I think it'll be an easier win, just because I'm not going all stats here, but I think if they come into the game with the right mentality and don't come into the game thinking, cocky and they're going to win, for sure, then I think, that's how upsets are made, so they're probably going to get upset in that situation. But I think if they come into the game with the right mentality, then they're probably going to get the dub.
I'm with you. Not a hot take at all. Obviously, Oregon taking care of business. I'll paint the picture of how James Madison does win this game, though. It's December 20th, Pacific Northwest weather. It could be ugly, rainy, grimy. James Madison is a team that runs the rock, a lot of quarterback running game. If this is the ball's so wet you can't throw the ball, and it's a kind of grinded out game close into the fourth quarter, that is the recipe that James Madison is rooting for. Oregon is very thin at receiver too, so if you're James Madison defensively coming to the park, I think it's a pack the box, and corners and safeties. See if you can make enough plays. And again, if the weather's a factor there, to just hang on outside, like that is the one area that I think Oregon, maybe not in the James Madison first round matchup, but long term is susceptible, is that receiver unit that they have just being so thin. They obviously have one of the best tight ends in the country, and Kenyon Sadiq might be a first round talent, but he's not necessarily a receiver. But that to me is kind of the storyline. In addition to, hey, maybe Oregon comes in sleepwalking. Oh, by the way, Oregon lost both their coordinators to head coaching positions. Tosh Lupoy heading to Cal and Will Stein heading to Kentucky. Is that a distraction and an outside factor that they can't control? Like all of those things is how, if James Madison does make this a game and shocks the world and pulls the upset, those are the three factors that have to fall into place.
Yeah, and now for the next game, Alabama versus Oklahoma. Okay, now this personally for me will probably be my favorite first round matchup to watch. And I mean, just for me, I don't know. I will definitely be watching this game because we have two pass heavy offenses with two defenses who can stop just about anything. Okay, from run to pass, and they are both teams that are built awesomely. Okay, just amazingly, and are both just some physically strong built teams with a lot of capabilities. And I would doubt to see this be a bad game. Like, I'm sure it will be such a good game, probably the top match of that first round. However, we saw Alabama lost that Georgia game by a ton, but Oklahoma only beat Alabama by a score of 23-21 last time they played. But I will say this, that doesn't take away from the fact that Oklahoma's defense has been pretty outstanding this year, and I think John Mateer will come out the gate doing his magic and get a hard-fought but deserved win.
This has obviously been an 8-9 matchup. This is to me like the closest on paper of all the matchups. To me, it's a matchup of terrible run games too. And I think who runs better in this game goes a long way in deciding who will win the game, to take pressure off the passing attack and quarterback wise as well. Because it's two teams that are built similarly. So much responsibility on their quarterback, so much pressure on their quarterback, and then defensive lines they like. Oklahoma defensively, I like what they're bringing to the park more. Is Alabama a little bit worn down after the SEC championship? Ty Simpson did not play as well as he had the first couple months of the season. So I lean Oklahoma on this because of their defense, and more specifically defensive line. Side note, defensive line is a huge factor with a lot of these teams because it's the calling card for a lot of these teams. You talk about not only Oklahoma, but Texas A&M, Miami as well. Ohio State's got some intriguing pass rushers, but I give the edge to Oklahoma. Alabama just feels like they got a negative snowball effect these past couple of weeks that I haven't seen enough on film to think that they're going to get out of that.
Yeah, I like that negative snowball effect. That was a funny comment. But next game moving on. Okay, Tulane and Ole Miss. Now, I like to think of it back at the Oregon-James Madison game. Not comparing the two, but just because, Tulane and James Madison are kind of in similar positions. But that's beside the point. Like the Oregon and James Madison game, I think it'll be a decently easy game for Ole Miss. But I would like to say this. I think, weirdly enough, that this Lane Kiffin drama that has been going on with Ole Miss could possibly, because of, how young college football players can be sometimes, controlling their minds and stuff, could possibly be a factor into this game. And I think that whole situation could be a big factor on it. I think if Ole Miss's players will feel like they've been left out the whole game, kind of feel like they're a different team in a way because they don't have they don't have their coach who just led them there, if that makes sense. But on the other hand, you have a scenario where Ole Miss could come out the gate and just play their best football yet, absolutely dominate 62-0, but they could just play absolutely insane football, and they could very well find themselves at a blowout. But weirdly enough, I think the entire game depends on whether Ole Miss comes out and thinks of this as a comeback stronger than ever game, or if they think of this as a game, we don't have our coach, so we have nothing to fight for kind of game. So it just kind of depends on how they think about it. However, either way, I think the safest bet is to just say Ole Miss gets the W.
Yeah, it's interesting you frame it that way because I could totally see a different lens where you kind of combine both points you were talking about in that it's, oh, we don't have our coach. We're playing with house money. We're playing with free. We're playing nothing to lose. Like everyone else is kind of counting us out. We're coming into this thing feeling that we're the we're the David and a David versus Goliath bracket
Yeah.
structure. And so that could work to Ole Miss's favor. And if I'm Pete Golding, their interim head coach, or I guess now full-time head coach, like that's the way that I'm positioning it to those guys to allow them to play free. Similar to the James Madison Oregon thing, like I think it's Ole Miss's game to lose, obviously. If Tulane does pull off the upset, the scenario that it plays out for that to happen is look back, what, a month ago when Washington State took Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi, down to the absolute wire late in that game. And Tulane's a better football team than Washington State. So looking at the film there, and I think Ole Miss's offense, if they don't have Lane Kiffin, which Charlie Weiss Jr. technically calls plays, Lane Kiffin was very involved in that, but Weiss Jr. calls plays. So I still think the structure's in place. But if the offense goes out there and lays an egg because you have these distractions and maybe Kiffin's talking to guys behind the scenes trying to get him to the portal and like the offense lays an egg there, Ole Miss is defensively, at least relative to like Miami, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, not as good. If Ole Miss is going to win a national title and win multiple games, it's going to be because this offense is lights out. Like this offense, the top end of this offense is as good as anyone in the country. Trinidad Chambliss, like you look at that film on the road at Georgia, on the road at Oklahoma, two of the best quarterback games that I've seen this entire season. Defensively, they're still good. I don't think they are great. And Tulane, they got Jake Retzlaff, who's played a lot of football. They got some playmakers there. I expect Ole Miss to win. But that of kind of Ole Miss coming out the gates slow, maybe the offense not being in rhythm, like that's the recipe where the Green Wave shocked the world.
Yeah, definitely. And then, of course, the last game for the first round, then, I mean, I'm going to kind of go a little bit slower for the next rounds because, I mean, it could be completely wrong. And so I have a little bit shorter notes. But Miami and Texas A&M, I have this going one of two ways. Okay, I have this either an absolute snooze fest or the highest scoring game of the first round. Like, I don't know why. I just feel like it's not going to be in the middle. I don't think it will. But the last pick for this first round, it's Texas A&M for me. It feels cheesy that I'm having the highest seed team going into the next round every single game. But this is another game that, for the record, I will not miss. Now, here's my thinking. Both of these teams have been kind of slow lately. Every time you watch Miami or Texas A&M play the past 2 weeks, you'd say, it feels like kind of a different football team in a way because, I mean, you feel like, like they're playing with the same energy or they're playing with the same style, but it just isn't working as efficiently. Like the opposing team has figured out how to stop it. And so it feels like a different football team lately. And, it compared to what they were at the start of the year. And they both end up getting the win most of the time, which is funny. But I think, personally, Texas A&M's offense outplays the Miami defense because we've seen Miami's defense kind of lackluster every once in a while. I mean, pretty much the whole season, but I mean, not literally the whole season. They're like good one week, bad the next week. And I think they beat the defense of Miami, especially with guys like Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion out there. Okay, they're really talented receivers. I personally like to think, I don't know if this is a huge take or not. I don't think it is, but I personally like to think that Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion are probably the best wide receiver duo in the league, which is possibly a take to some fans, but to me, it does not seem like it.
I love Casey Concepcion, so you won't get pushed back there.
Yeah, and then they both end up which of course makes it a whole lot easier when you have both those receivers out there with you, okay? So I think Texas A&M's offense just barely plays out the Miami defense, or it could be a Texas A&M blowout, or a small win for Texas A&M. It's just going to be one of the two, but I think Texas A&M does pull away. I just think it's not going to be like a 23-21 score, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm excited for this game. I think this is probably the one that I'm most excited for. I think a couple factors that stick out to me. One, this is where the first round being able to host host game is huge, right? That they're going to Miami's going to Kyle Field. That's maybe the most daunting of the home field atmosphere. I mean, Autzon's no joke, don't get me wrong, but like 100,000 Kyle Field, that's going to be really tough from an offense perspective, Miami wise. This is the game where the defensive line matchups stick out to me. You have arguably the best pass rusher in the country in Ruben Bain for Miami, and then arguably, at least statistically, I haven't checked the stats since last week, but 2 weeks ago, Texas A&M's defensive line statistically had the most sacks in the entire country. So which defensive line can make the bigger impact on the opposing quarterback? Also intrigued to see where Marcel Reed's injury status is at. Like that knee injury or like that tweak in Texas, he was very concerning. I haven't heard much about that, but like that's something that I'll have my eye on. I think at the end of the day, I got Texas A&M winning this game. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. But right now, I think we're sleeping on Texas A&M a little bit. And where I say sleeping on is, there was a world where they dropped just to 5 and not all the way to 7. There's a world where they were above Oregon and Ole Miss. And my sense is that they fell behind them because the committee assessed a weaker SEC schedule for A&M on. They played a lot of weak SEC teams relative to some of the other SEC teams in the conversation. And then it was kind of the narrative of, oh, they got a true test versus Texas in that game. So then how good is A&M really? I think A&M's really good. And I just unfortunate that they had the SEC schedule they had. But when I turn on the film, even though they're playing lower level SEC competition, it's still an SEC team. And you can see that they have some dudes out there getting it done. So I think we're sleeping a little bit on the top end of what A&M is. I think they come out with a win. It's a 4 game, but then the home field, Marcel Reed's legs, maybe a couple big plays from KC Concepcion, like you talked about, give the Aggies the edge.
Yeah, definitely. I think Texas A&M is going to end up probably taking home the W on that one. Now, of course, the quarterfinals are not set in stone yet, but according to my predictions or your predictions, I think so far, I don't really know. According to my screen right now, we have the same predictions, I think. But
Yep.
yeah, so the quarterfinals, right? So this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Once again, I'm going to keep it a little bit shorter. Oregon versus Texas Tech. So I have Texas Tech pulling away with this one. I think this is the game that Oregon's offense probably, slows down a little. Listen, it seems weird being a 14-year-old sports analyst and being a bandwagon fan of a team, but you know how like you like that team, like you just pay attention to them a lot. Like I'm not a big fan of them, but Oregon's one of those teams that I will pay attention to a lot. And so I've watched a lot of Oregon games this year, and Oregon's offense every once in a while just slows down a little. Like when they play consistently, sometimes they just slow down a little. And I do think Oregon's defense is really good this year, and I think they will probably end up stopping Texas Tech's offense from scoring a ton, but Oregon's offense I don't think will be able to score that many this game, so I actually think Texas Tech is going to get the W.
This is where we disagree. This is good. This is what the people came to see. I got the Oregon Ducks for a couple reasons. One, I think mentality-wise, Oregon in the underdog role. And a year ago, they were the top dog, or they were the team to lose, right? The narrative was like, oh, can Dan Lanning finally get it done? Can Oregon and finally get over the hump with all this NIL investment? That's not the narrative this year around. The narrative is very much, hey, Oregon is not getting slept on, but they're obviously not one of the first, the top 4 teams. And so I think mentality-wise, they come in there. And on the flip side, it's college football. It's Texas Tech. Where's their mentality at, right? They understandably so had a huge celebration this weekend. I'm not saying they're going to lay an egg, but this will be, hey, they're the favorite team. And are they coming in a little flat? I think it's a fair question. I also don't think Texas Tech has played a team like Oregon this year. And BYU was a good football team, but their offense scared nobody. And I'm not saying Oregon has the most daunting offense in the top 12, but athletes-wise, explosiveness-wise, I think this is a different kind of test for Texas Tech, at least relative to BYU. BYU's passing game would not fear really any top 20 team. That's not how BYU is going to win games. Yeah. Oregon, with Dante Moore and the weapons that they have, and Kenyon Sadiq, like I know I just mentioned mentioned a thinner receiver room. It's thin, but it's not incapable. And I like the Ducks. I think the defensive line transfers that they got could put some pressure on Baron Morton. And the broadcast, Jesse Palmer this past Saturday was talking about, hey, it's an offense with air raid principles, but then they really like to get to some of the basic core power run concepts, which they're great at. Don't get me wrong, but that's also known as not an overly complex offense. Like it's kind of meat and potatoes run game, and then air raid principles, which as people know, we're not going to have tons and tons of concepts. We're going to have kind of like a half a dozen forks that we're going to be better than the team across from you. I think Oregon brings a lot to the park defensively, and I think this is a close game, but like a lot of the fringe factors to Oregon. Oh, and then the last point too, one thing that got brushed under the rug last week of the season, rivalry week, to go on the road to Seattle and absolutely prolific Husky offense with Demond Williams did not get enough credit nationally. That was a really impressive that I thought got swept under the rug. I know Washington's not a playoff team, but they're a good football team. And there was a world where that was a close game, rivalry game on the road. Oregon absolutely dominated the whole fight. So I think they come in here with a lot of momentum on their side.
Oregon, that's a great point. Okay. That actually is. I didn't think of anything that you just said right there. I just personally think, like I said, I think Oregon's offense actually is not going to, I think, like you said, the thin receiver room. I actually think the thin receiver room is going to play a factor in that game, weirdly enough. But Oklahoma versus Indiana is the next one. Now, I see Indiana pulling away with this one because, honestly, Indiana is way better than I thought they were until I saw that Big Ten championship. Okay. After I saw the Big Ten championship, I have other thoughts going around my mind. Okay. Because they just beat a team named Ohio State. Okay. And I'm sure you've heard of them before. I think you've heard of Ohio State before, right? Who is known for scoring tons of points. Okay. And Indiana held the Ohio State offense to only 10 points that game. I mean, that is absurd. The past 2 years, I mean, this team has been known for Jeremiah Smith's capabilities of running down the field, getting those 6 point, like touchdowns upon touchdowns upon touchdowns. Indiana held them to 10 points by the end of the game. I think Indiana's defense will be too much for that air raid offense that Oklahoma runs, and I think Indiana will pull away with the W.
And you had Indiana versus Oklahoma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. I think this is where Indiana being a complete football team, which their defense goes widely underappreciated. The balance of their offense goes underappreciated too. Like Fernando Mendoza gets the headlines for being a Heisman Trophy winner, but they have multiple receivers they can get to. They got running backs that are great. Like this is just a complete team. And when you're facing a complete team versus an opposing team that has a glaring hole in Oklahoma and their offensive run game, assuming Mateer's hand is all good to go now and that whole deal, like that works to Indiana's advantage so well. This is not the matchup that you want if you're Oklahoma. If you're Oklahoma, I'd much rather go against Texas Tech and see if can Oklahoma's pressure package try to confuse a more like air raid pass game for Texas Tech? Like that's the matchup you'd want if you're Oklahoma. I love this on paper for Indiana. I think they keep it rolling. Very intrigued to see where Omar Cooper, their receiver, his injury's at because he's their most dynamic weapon in the pass game. I know Charlie Becker's getting all the headlines, but I love Omar Cooper. But give me Indiana to advance.
All right. And then Ole Miss versus Georgia. I think this is where Ole Miss starts to slow down a little bit. I think they don't make it further because, like I mentioned, I see some thoughts of all that drama creeping in a way. And I see Georgia's offense easily outplaying the Ole Miss defense.
I'll keep this one fun, man. I'm here for the Ole Miss story. Everyone's on the Georgia bandwagon right now. Everyone's on their side. I look back to that they had in between the hedges on the road, and Ole Miss went toe-to-toe with that Georgia defense. Again, that was Trinidad Chambliss. People know that he's really good. I think he's better than that. I think he is one of the top quarterbacks in college football. This is not just he's a nice D2 story that struck gold with Lane Kiffin's offense. Like this dude's a baller, and he's consistently throwing guys open that other good quarterbacks are not doing. I'm here for the Ole Miss story. I think they're playing. I think they walk into this mentality with a nothing to lose, playing with house money mentality. They get enough stops and they force Gunnar Stockton to make enough third down throws where Trinidad Chambliss wins that battle. And maybe the extra game that Georgia had to play hurts them from a hurts Georgia, even though they have they get the bye. I know, but does that hurt their depth and whatnot? I'm buying the Ole Miss train, man. I think it'd be phenomenal for college football. Give me the Rebels with the upset.
That would be really cool. I would love to see that too, but I just don't see it. We're disagreeing on the Ole Miss thing here. Then Texas A&M versus Ohio State. I see Ohio State pulling away. Okay, I think Ohio State's offense is too outmatched. Okay, I think it's been too outmatched this year. Besides, of course, the Big Ten championship that I was just talking about, they did get slowed down a little bit. I think they're too outmatched, of course, with Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith, and I think this is where the tiring college football playoff bracket. Because, it's longer now. I think Texas A&M started in the first round, and I get some other teams started in the first round too. Oregon did, but it plays into effect with some other teams. But I think that kind of creeps into Texas A&M a little bit here, and I think, honestly, that could be a decent play here for Ohio State winning this game.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think Ohio State beats Texas A&M. I think this is a tough draw for Texas A&M to get them in the second round. One thing that sticks out to me, the past two matchups, Julian Sayin thrown an interception on the first drive in both those games. It feels like in both those games, as a result, Ohio State wasn't able to be foot on the gas in the first half, and you're kind of playing catch up. And I know they took care of business versus Michigan, but I think if Julian Sayin doesn't throw an interception on that first drive, the overall vibe of the offense in that game versus Indiana's defense is great, but I think it changes. I think Julian Sayin's a better quarterback than that, and I don't think that will continue. They got so many weapons, and we saw this last year with Ohio State not being the favorite heading into the playoff. Chip on the shoulder mentality. They come in here with an edge. They got so many playmakers. I like the Buckeyes to win that one.
Yep, and then here's the semifinals. Okay, I have Texas Tech versus Indiana, then Georgia versus Ohio State. Let's start with Texas Tech versus Indiana. Texas Tech versus Indiana. I see Indiana pulling away kind of for the exact same reason that I just said Indiana beats Oklahoma. I think Indiana, their offense, and their defense really is just kind of, in a way, too outmatched because of what I just saw for that Texas Tech defense, and I do actually think Indiana's offense and defense really locks in here, and I think Indiana gets the dub here.
Gosh, I want to pick Oregon in my upset here, but I just think Indiana's too much. I think this is razor close, razor thin. I think it comes down to the fourth quarter. Give me Indiana and Fernando Mendoza to continue the historic season for the Hoosiers.
Yep. And then Georgia versus Ohio State. You might call me crazy here, but yes, my national championship is the Big Ten championship. I have Ohio State and Indiana in the national championship, and they just played in the Big Ten championship. I think Georgia's defense is great, but I feel like Ohio State has a sort of mentality where they just kind of lock in. Like, they're like, okay, we're in the semifinals. We got to really lock in. And you've seen it in the past. When they really focus, they're like unstoppable, okay? Like, they really are. And so I think Ohio State, in a really high-scoring shootout against Georgia and Gunnar Stockton, comes away with the win.
I also think it'd be a high-scoring shootout, but I got Ole Miss versus Ohio State, and this is where the talent discrepancy shows through. And Ole Miss, what a fun run, what a fun story, great for college football, but not enough juice on the front seven for Ole Miss to hold up with Ohio State. And the same logic I just said, the mentality of the Buckeyes continues to roll, and I'm in agreement. A little rematch in the national title with all sorts of storylines coming to a head. You got Ohio State chasing a back-to-back national title appearance. You got potentially against versus at that time what I think will be the Heisman Trophy winner and what could be the best story in college football of maybe my lifetime from one of the worst programs in the history of college football. with a shot at a national title in a rematch game that we saw just 3 or 4 weeks earlier. The stage will be set.
Yep. And now a rematch of the Big Ten Championship, Indiana versus Ohio State. Do we agree or do we disagree here? I see Indiana once again pulling away and getting the win, and I see them winning because I think their defense once again just plays outstanding, and this time I see another kind of low-scoring affair, and I think, Kurt Signetti, I think he comes out there and he does what he likes. Google me. I think he does that, and he wins this game, and I think he is a national champion after this game.
All right, perfect. This makes for good content. We disagree. I think Ohio State gets it done.
Gosh.
I think the magic runs out for Indiana. Biggest reason why is, so that was the first game for Ohio State where they really faced a balanced team and a defense that really slowed them up. Michigan did some good things, but when you face Jeremiah Smith defensively, you're bringing a game plan to the park that you haven't brought to any other offense that you faced all season long. So now Ohio State has the tape for how Indiana defended their two stud receivers, but most importantly, Jeremiah Smith. I think that works to Ohio State's advantage disproportionately in a big way in the second matchup, in addition to all the other, cliches of it's hard to beat a team twice and the mentality of Ohio State coming into this, knowing that they lost the previous time before. But I think all those factors in the margins really help Ohio State. And we see back-to-back national championships for Ryan Day after only 13 months ago, people calling for him to get fired after the Michigan loss. What a turnaround, and deservedly so that would be for Ryan Day.
Yeah. I almost said that too. I almost wrote down, I had Ohio State written down on my notes, and then I said, you know what, I think Indiana's defense pulls away here. I think it's going to be another Indiana win. But yeah, you have
It'll
Ohio
be close.
State.
It'll be fun for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. This college football
It'll be
playoffs-
close for sure.
Oh yeah, if that happens, I don't know. But man, this is going to be a great college football playoffs, and I guess that's going to do it. That is the first Road to the Natty episode 1 out of 5. 4 more mystery analysts coming on the show. A little hint, 2 more, of course, will be ESPN analysts. This is the first one. There's 2 more coming on, fun fact. Thank you guys so much for watching. Any new viewers, hit that follow button. And I will see you guys once again. Check out Max Brown. He's linked below. And I'll see you guys next week, probably, for the next episode of The Road to the Natty. Let's go.
This is The Road to the Natty. Hit follow for more. Trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by February of 2026. Make sure to share with friends. And thanks to everyone who watches. See you next time.